I held the handwritten note, my daughter Emily's elegant script doing nothing to soften the message. Mom, please don't try to join us in Venice. Robert's parents are taking us to stay at Palazzo Contarini, and it's a very exclusive arrangement. It's just for the four of us. You wouldn't be comfortable with their level of sophistication. Love you. I glanced at the antique key sitting on my desk, its brass surface worn smooth from decades of use. The same key that opened the grand doors of Palazzo Contarini, my home for 20 years before I moved back to the States. My phone buzzed with a text from Robert's mother, Margaret. Emily told you about our Venice plans? So sorry you can't join. These exclusive properties are quite particular about guest lists. I smiled, remembering the extensive restoration I'd overseen on the palazzo's frescoed ceilings. The artisans had lived in the East Wing for 2 years, teaching me everything about Renaissance art while we worked. Ms. Blackwood, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. The palazzo's caretaker, Giuseppe, is on line 1. Shall I tell him you'll take his call? Yes, Anna. And please get me the Venice airport director after. I picked up the phone, switching to Italian. Giuseppe. Come stai, old friend. Signora, there is a small problem. A family has somehow booked the palazzo through an agency. They claim to have exclusive access next month. Ah yes, my daughter and her in-laws. Tell me, is everything prepared as usual? Sai, Signora. Your private wing is ready, the art collection unveiled, and the gondolier service arranged. But these people, they are quite demanding. The mother-in-law insists on redecorating the blue salon for their stay. I thought of Margaret, who collected reproduction Renaissance art and claimed to be an expert. No changes to the salon, Giuseppe. And please ensure my mother's portrait remains in place above the fireplace. Of course, Signora. Will you be joining them? Oh yes, I said, watching my email ping with their confirmed booking details. Though they don't know that yet. After hanging up, I opened the elegant invitation I'd been holding onto. The Venice Biennale Committee was honoring me for 20 years of arts patronage and historical preservation. The ceremony would be held at, of all places, Palazzo Contarini. My phone lit up with Emily's message. Mom, Robert's parents are so excited. They say this palazzo is impossible to book. Only the most sophisticated people ever get to stay there. I looked at the photos on my wall. Emily at age 6, painting in the palazzo's garden. She had loved it there before status and social climbing became her focus. Before Robert's family convinced her that old money was the only acceptable kind. The intercom buzzed again. Ms. Blackwood, the Contarini Foundation board members are asking about next month's art acquisition meeting. Tell them we'll hold it as planned, I replied. The palazzo's main gallery should be perfect. I pulled up the security camera feeds on my laptop, watching the palazzo's current visitors admire my art collection. 20 years of carefully curated pieces, each with its own story. Stories my daughter used to love hearing. My phone rang, Robert's father this time. Sandra? Listen, no hard feelings about the Venice trip. It's just that these sorts of places have certain standards. You understand. I watched through the camera as a tour group admired the Titian I'd restored last summer. Oh, I understand standards very well, James. How's the agency handling your booking? Bit of a hiccup, actually. They're saying something about the owner's approval being needed for any changes Margaret wants to make. Quite inconvenient. Don't suppose you know anyone in the Venice property circuit? I smiled, fingering the ancient key. I might have a few connections. Really? I thought you'd never been to Venice. There's quite a lot you don't know about me, James. For instance, have you ever wondered why the palazzo's main gallery is called La Sala Sandra? Silence on the other end. What are you saying? Let's just say some mothers have deeper roots than their daughters realize. Will you be attending the biennial ceremony next month? The private event at the Palazzo? Margaret's been trying to get invitations for months. How do you know about it? Because, dear James, they're honoring me. At my Palazzo, where you're all planning to stay. The silence stretched longer this time. Your Palazzo? For 20 years now. Though Emily seems to have forgotten the summer she spent painting in its gardens. I could hear him calling Margaret in the background, their urgent whispers carrying through the phone. Sandra, there seems to be some confusion. No confusion at all. You wanted exclusive access to Palazzo Contarini. You're about to get it, along with a lesson in making assumptions about people's sophistication. Within an hour, my doorbell rang. Emily stood there with Robert and his parents, all looking as if they'd seen a ghost. Come in, I said, leading them into my study where photos of the palazzo lined the walls. I assume you have questions. Emily's eyes locked on a picture of her younger self, covered in paint, sitting in the palazzo's garden. Mom, why didn't you ever say anything about owning one of Venice's most historic palazzos? You never asked. Too busy being impressed by the Valenciennes' summer cottage, as I recall. Margaret flushed. Sandra, if we'd known. Known what? That the simple mother you've been dismissing for years has been preserving Italian history while you collect reproductions. I kept my voice gentle, but the point landed. I pulled out a leather portfolio filled with restoration documents, architectural plans, and photos spanning 2 decades. This is what real sophistication looks like, not booking through an exclusive agency, but spending years learning from master artisans, protecting centuries of art, keeping history alive. Robert's father cleared his throat. The biennial ceremony is honoring 20 years of art's patronage, I finished. Though I suspect that's not quite as impressive as Margaret's country club membership. Emily sank into a chair, looking shell-shocked. All those summers in Venice, I thought we were just renting. You thought a lot of things, dear, most of them shaped by people who measure worth by price tags rather than substance. I opened my laptop, showing them the palazzo's live security feeds. See that, Titian? I spent 6 months working with restorers to save it. The frescoes in the blue salon Margaret wanted to update, they're from the 16th century, the gardens where Emily used to paint. They're in every art history book about Venetian landscapes. Margaret had gone pale. I told the agency I wanted to redecorate. Yes, Giuseppe mentioned that. He found it quite amusing, considering it took us 3 years to restore those rooms to their original glory. Robert spoke for the first time. Why didn't you tell us when we booked it? Would you have learned anything if I had? I countered. Or would you have just switched to bragging about your mother-in-law's palazzo instead of dismissing her? Emily was crying softly now. I've been so awful, Mom. So caught up in trying to impress everyone. The palazzo has that effect on people, I said. Either it teaches them true value, or it exposes their pretenses. Which lesson would you like to learn? James shifted uncomfortably. About our booking. Your booking stands, I assured them. With some adjustments. You'll stay in the family wing, where Emily used to spend her summers. The main wing is hosting the biennial committee. We'd assumed we'd have the whole palazzo, Margaret began. You assumed many things, I interrupted. That's rather the point of this conversation. I pulled out 5 invitation cards to the biennial ceremony. These are rather difficult to get. Margaret, you mentioned trying for months. She nodded mutely. Consider this your education in real influence versus purchased access. You're all invited, not as guests, but as my family. Though that depends on whether you still think I'm too unsophisticated to associate with. The silence in the room was deafening. The palazzo's gardens open at dawn, I continued. The light is perfect for painting then. Remember, Emily? She nodded, wiping her eyes. You used to have breakfast brought out to me while I worked. The staff treated us like family. They are family. Giuseppe has worked there for 30 years. His daughter's art now hangs in the main gallery, next to your childhood paintings. My paintings are in the gallery? Emily's voice cracked. In La Sala Sandra, named by the staff, though not for the reasons you all assumed. I stood up, walking to the window. So shall we discuss your Venice plans? The real ones this time? 3 weeks later, we stepped off my private water taxi onto the palazzo's marble steps. The transformation in my companions was already visible. Gone were Margaret's ostentatious designer logos, and James's booming pronouncements about exclusive access. Emily clutched my arm as we entered the grand foyer. I forgot how beautiful it is, she whispered. How did I ever take this for granted? Giuseppe appeared, greeting me with warm embraces and rapid Italian. I watched my daughter's face as she recognized him. Piccola Emily, he exclaimed. You have returned to paint our gardens again. She smiled, tears in her eyes. You kept my old easel? In its same spot, Signorina. The morning light still waits for you. Over the next few days, I watched them all rediscover the palazzo, not as tourists this time, but as family. Margaret abandoned her plans for redecorating, instead spending hours learning about the authentic Renaissance pieces from our resident art historian. James stopped talking about exclusive access and started asking questions about preservation techniques. I found him one evening in deep conversation with our restoration team, genuinely fascinated by their work. But it was Emily who underwent the most profound change. Every morning, she was in the garden with her paints, just like when she was young. Her Instagram posts about luxury travel were replaced by thoughtful sketches and stories about the palazzo's history. The night before the biennial ceremony, we gathered in the blue salon, the room Margaret had once wanted to modernize. Now she sat quietly, admiring the original frescoes with new understanding. "Mom," Emily said, looking at my mother's portrait above the fireplace. "Grandma would have loved knowing you preserved all this. She's the one who taught me that true sophistication isn't about ownership, it's about stewardship," I replied. "This palazzo doesn't belong to us. We belong to it." Robert squeezed Emily's hand. "I'm sorry we ever made you feel like you needed to prove yourself to us. The palazzo has a way of teaching humility," I said, watching the sunset paint the Grand Canal in gold. "It survived centuries of people far more important than us." The next evening, as I accepted the biennial honor, I looked out at my family sitting in the front row. They had learned more than I expected. Margaret wore a simple black dress, her usual flashy jewelry replaced by quiet elegance. James listened attentively to the Italian speeches, no longer boasting about connections. And Emily, my Emily, was sketching the scene, her artist's eye capturing not the superficial glamour, but the deep beauty of the moment. Later in the garden, she showed me her drawing. "I finally understand, Mom. What you've built here isn't about exclusivity or showing off. It's about preserving something precious for future generations." I hugged her, remembering the little girl who used to paint here without caring about status or social climbing. Sometimes the most valuable things in life are the ones that remind us who we really are. As we stood there, watching the lights of Venice twinkle on the water, Margaret approached with unusual hesitation. "Sandra," she said softly, "thank you for teaching us the difference between having class and buying it." I smiled, thinking of all the summers ahead, of Emily's children perhaps painting in these gardens someday. "Welcome to the real Venice," I said, "the one that can't be booked through any agency. Because sometimes the most exclusive address isn't about who you keep out. It's about what you choose to preserve, protect, and pass on."